The massive crystal dome of Nexus Prime stretched across the sky like a second sun. Inside its gleaming walls, the greatest minds of the galaxy gathered for another session of the Galactic Council. Ships from hundreds of worlds filled the orbital platforms around the capital planet. Each vessel represented a different species, a different culture, and a different level of power in the vast network of civilizations that controlled the stars. Ambassador Zexathara walked through the grand halls with confident steps. Her crystalline body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the polished floors. As a representative of the hegemony, she commanded respect from nearly every other delegate. The hegemony controlled over 3,000 star systems and had the most advanced military in the galaxy. When Zexathara spoke, others listened. The morning session focused on trade disputes between the Mining Guild and the Agricultural Consortium. Boring stuff, really. Zexathara let her mind wander as the representatives argued about shipping routes and resource allocation. These meetings always covered the same topics: who could mine where, which species got access to what technology, and how to divide up the galaxy's wealth among the major powers. A soft chime indicated a short break. Delegates scattered to private meetings and informal discussions. Zexathara was reviewing her notes when a young aide approached her. The creature looked nervous, its green skin showing patches of lighter color that meant anxiety in its species. "Ambassador," the aide said quietly, "I wanted to bring something to your attention. It concerns one of the quarantine systems." Zexathara barely looked up from her datapad. "What about them?" "The quarantine protocols are clear. We don't interfere with pre-FTL species until they develop faster-than-light travel on their own." "Yes, ma'am, but this particular system has shown some unusual activity lately. The species there, they call themselves humans, have been making rapid technological progress. Our long-range sensors detected some energy signatures that don't match their normal development patterns." Now Zexathara did look up, but only to give the aide a look that could freeze plasma. "Humans? You mean the primitives in System Sol 3? The ones who still fight wars over water and pieces of land?" The aide's skin turned even lighter. "Yes, ma'am. Those ones. But the energy readings suggest they might be experimenting with spatial manipulation technology. Nothing confirmed, of course, but the patterns are unusual for a species at their development level." Zexathara laughed, a sound like crystal bells breaking. "Spatial manipulation? Those barely evolved apes can't even leave their own star system without chemical rockets. They've been stuck on their single world for their entire recorded history, except for a few short trips to their tiny moon." She stood up, her tall form casting long shadows. "Let me tell you something about humans, young one. I've read the reports. They're violent, primitive creatures who spend most of their time fighting each other over resources their planet has in abundance. They pollute their own world, start wars over invisible lines they draw on maps, and waste enormous amounts of energy on entertainment and sports." The aide tried to speak again, but Zexathara held up one crystalline hand for silence. "Their most advanced weapons are crude fusion devices that they're too scared to use because they might destroy themselves. Their space program consists of strapping themselves to controlled explosions and hoping for the best. Do you know how long it took them to figure out how to keep people alive in space for more than a few days? No, ma'am. Decades. It took them decades to learn what any spacefaring species figures out in a few years. They're not even close to understanding the basic principles of faster-than-light travel. Most species develop at least theoretical FTL, physics within a century of achieving nuclear fusion. The humans have had fusion for almost a century, and they still think the speed of light is some kind of universal barrier." Zexathara walked to the massive windows that looked out over the capital city. Thousands of species moved through the streets below, all of them part of the vast galactic community. Ships came and went from the spaceports, carrying goods and people between distant worlds in the time it took humans to travel between cities on their own planet. "The humans are a perfect example of a dead-end species," she continued. "They have All the aggressive instincts necessary for space exploration, but none of the wisdom to use those instincts properly. They'll either destroy themselves in some stupid war, or they'll spend the next 1,000 years slowly, painfully crawling toward basic space technology. But the energy readings, the aide started, are probably some kind of weapons test. Zexathera interrupted. Those creatures love their weapons. They've turned warfare into an art form. If they're generating unusual energy signatures, it's because they're building bigger and better ways to kill each other. She turned back to face the aide, her expression showing the kind of patience an adult might have for a particularly slow child. I've been doing this job for over 2 centuries. I've seen dozens of species at the human's development level. Some make it to the stars. Most don't. The ones that do make it usually take between 500 and 2,000 years to develop stable FTL technology. The humans show no signs of the social development necessary for that kind of advancement. They can't even agree on how to manage their own planet, let alone coordinate the kind of massive scientific and industrial projects required for interstellar travel. Their political systems change every few years. Their economic systems are based on the idea that infinite growth is possible on a finite world. They're doomed to failure. The aide looked uncomfortable but pressed on. Should we at least increase monitoring of the system? The readings really are unusual, and it wouldn't cost much to send a science vessel to take a closer look. Zexathera's laugh was sharper this time. And waste resources on those primitives? Do you have any idea how many species are currently at the edge of FTL development? Real species with actual potential for galactic citizenship? We have the Kethmori, who've just solved stable fusion containment. The Veltari have developed quantum computing and are working on spatial mathematics. The Mordun have achieved perfect biological engineering and are starting to think about the stars. Those species deserve our attention and resources. Those species have shown the kind of steady, logical progress that leads to successful spacefaring civilizations. The humans are a distraction at best. She walked back to her desk and sat down, clearly considering the conversation over. File your report if you must, but mark it as low priority. Note that the hegemony considers System Sol 3 to be of minimal strategic or scientific interest. We'll review their status again in 50 years, assuming they haven't destroyed themselves by then. The aide gathered its courage for one final attempt. What if we're wrong? What if they do achieve FTL technology ahead of schedule? Zexathera didn't even look up from her data pad. Then I'll personally apologize to every human I meet. But that's not going to happen. Trust me. I've been evaluating pre-FTL species longer than your entire homeworld has been spacefaring. I know a dead-end species when I see one. The aide left. Its mission failed. Zexathera returned to her work, already forgetting about the brief conversation. She had real problems to deal with. Trade negotiations with the academic collective, border disputes with the Freedom Alliance, and the endless task of maintaining hegemony control over the galaxy's most important systems. Meanwhile, in a small research facility hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at readings that would have made every alien scientist in the galaxy stop breathing if they had known about them. The massive particle accelerator stretched for miles underground, but that wasn't what had her attention. What mattered was the tiny point of absolute nothingness that hung in the center of her laboratory. For exactly 0.3 seconds, her team had opened a hole in space itself. For 0.3 seconds, they had connected 2 points in the universe that were separated by hundreds of meters, making distance meaningless. For 0.3 seconds, they had achieved something that every physics textbook said was impossible. Run the calculation. Again, she told her assistant, a young man whose hands were still shaking from excitement. I've run it 12 times, Dr. Chen. The math is solid. We created a stable micro-wormhole. It lasted for 0.3 of a second before collapsing, but it was real. We sent a photon through it, and it arrived at the target before we even fired the laser. Sarah Chen looked at the data one more time, then at the massive machines that surrounded them. Everything they had built was primitive compared to what this discovery might lead to. If they could extend the duration of the wormhole, if they could control its size and destination, if they could scale up the technology. "What's our next step?" her assistant asked. Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that might have worried any alien who bothered to study human facial expressions. "We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to take something impossible and make it work." Far above them, in the depths of space, automated alien monitoring stations continued their patient watch over the Sol system. They recorded the usual human activities: radio transmissions full of entertainment and arguments, chemical rockets carrying supplies to primitive space stations, and the endless electromagnetic noise of a species that hadn't learned to properly manage its own technology. None of the monitoring stations were designed to detect the specific type of spatial distortion that had occurred deep underground on Earth. The aliens who built those stations had made assumptions about human development that seemed perfectly reasonable. After all, every other species in the galaxy had followed roughly the same path to the stars. First fusion power, then better computers, then basic space industry, then theoretical FTL physics, and finally working faster than light travel. The process took centuries at best, millennia at worst. The idea that a species might skip several steps, that they might stumble onto advanced spatial manipulation before they had even established permanent colonies on other worlds in their own system, was so unlikely that no one had bothered to prepare for it. In the Galactic Council's vast databases, System Sol 3 remained marked as a low-priority quarantine zone. The humans were expected to follow the same slow, predictable path that every other species had taken to join the galactic community. There was no reason to think otherwise, no reason at all. The next session of the Galactic Council began with reports from the Outer Rim territories, new trade agreements, minor territorial adjustments, and the usual complaints about shipping delays. Zexathara listened with half her attention while reviewing proposals for the hegemony's next expansion phase. She had completely forgotten about the nervous aid and their concerns about unusual energy readings from some primitive world. After all, she had more important things to worry about than the activities of a species that hadn't even learned to leave its own star system. It would be 3 years before anyone in the galaxy learned just how wrong that assumption was. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavor and watched impossible things happen on his screens. 3 years of his life had led to this moment. 3 years of testing, training, and wondering if the scientists were completely insane or completely brilliant. The answer was both. "Wormhole drive stable," reported Lieutenant Kim from the engineering station. "All systems green. We're holding position approximately 4 light-years from Earth, near the Kepler 442 system." Marcus nodded, trying to look calm while his heart hammered against his ribs. They had just traveled 4 light-years in 37 minutes. The trip should have taken over 4 years, even at the speed of light. Instead, they had stepped through folded space like walking through a doorway. "Any signs of local traffic?" he asked. Ensign Torres checked her sensors. "Nothing on conventional scans, sir." "Wait." She frowned at her displays. "Sir, I'm picking up something unusual. It's not broadcasting on any frequency we recognize, but there's definitely an artificial object about 2 million kilometers away." "Show me." The main screen shifted to display a ship unlike anything in Earth's databases. It was long and sleek, with a hull that seemed to shift color as they watched. Strange projections extended from various points along its length and the whole thing pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light. "That's not human," Marcus said quietly. His communications officer, Lieutenant Park, looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving some kind of transmission from that vessel. It's not using radio waves. The signal is coming through on frequencies that shouldn't exist according to our physics." "Can you translate it?" "The computer is trying, but this is way beyond anything we've prepared for. It's like they're using mathematics we haven't discovered yet." Marcus studied the alien ship. This was the moment every human had dreamed about and feared since they first looked up at the stars. First contact with an alien species. The protocols were clear. Be cautious, be respectful, and try not to start a war. Open a channel on all frequencies, he ordered. Basic mathematical signals first, then try simple language patterns. For several minutes, the two ships hung in space, exchanging increasingly complex signals. The aliens seemed as surprised as the humans. Their transmissions grew more urgent, more questioning. Finally, Lieutenant Park announced a breakthrough. "Sir, their computer is learning our language from our transmissions. I'm getting something that looks like actual words." The main speaker crackled to life with a voice that sounded like wind through crystal. "Human vessel, this is impossible. Repeat, this is impossible. How did you achieve faster-than-light travel?" Marcus activated the communications system. "This is Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the United Earthship Endeavor. We've achieved FTL travel through wormhole manipulation technology. May I ask who I'm speaking with?" A long pause followed. When the voice returned, it sounded stunned. "This is Science Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian research vessel Quantum. Wind. Human Captain, our records show your species achieved controlled fusion only 50 cycles ago. You should not possess FTL technology for at least another 1,000 cycles. Cycles? Your years. We have been monitoring your system since your species split the atom. You are developing far too quickly for this to be natural progression." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You've been watching us? All pre-FTL species are monitored according to Galactic Council protocols. But Captain Rodriguez, you must understand how impossible this situation is. No species in recorded galactic history has achieved FTL travel before establishing colonies throughout their home system. No species has developed spatial manipulation without first mastering quantum field theory, dimensional mathematics, and unified physics. We call it the Chen Drive," Marcus said. "Dr. Sarah Chen discovered how to create stable wormholes using modified fusion reactors and quantum field generators." Another long pause. "Captain, would you be willing to meet in person? I need to verify that your ship is real and not some elaborate deception." Marcus looked around his bridge. His crew looked back at him with expressions ranging from excitement to terror. They had trained for this moment, but training and reality were very different things. "Agreed, Science Commander. We'll meet at the midpoint between our vessels." An hour later, Marcus floated in the Endeavor's shuttle bay, watching the airlock cycle open to admit their first alien visitor. He had no idea what to expect. The science fiction movies back home had prepared him for everything from beautiful humanoids to tentacled monsters. What came through the airlock was neither. Science Commander Veltar stood about 7 feet tall, with 6 legs arranged around a central body. His skin looked like polished metal, and his 6 eyes were arranged in 2 rows across the front of his head. When he spoke, his voice came from a translator device attached to his chest. "Captain Rodriguez, I must apologize for my shock. In 500 years of galactic exploration, I have never encountered anything like this situation." Marcus tried to hide his own amazement. "It's an honor to meet you, Science Commander. You're the first non-human we've ever encountered, and you represent a complete impossibility according to everything we know about species development." Veltar's eyes moved independently, studying Marcus and the shuttle bay around them. "Your ship uses technology that should be beyond your civilization for centuries. We tend to develop things quickly when we put our minds to it." "Quickly?" Veltar's translator conveyed something that might have been laughter. "Captain, most species require between 800 and 2,000 years to progress from first controlled fusion to working FTL drives. Your species has done it in less than 100. Marcus led Veltar through the ship, showing him the wormhole drive and explaining what little he understood about how it worked. The alien scientist grew more agitated with each revelation. "This is not how technological development works," Veltar kept saying. "There are prerequisites, mathematical foundations that must be established, engineering challenges that take generations to solve. safety protocols that require centuries of testing. Dr. Chen says that most problems have solutions if you think about them differently, Marcus replied. She approached FTL travel as an engineering challenge instead of a physics problem. Engineering? Captain, you're manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time. This requires theoretical physics at the highest level. She built it in her garage first. Veltar stopped walking, all 6 of his eyes focused on Marcus. Excuse me? The first prototype. Dr. Chen built it in her garage using parts from old television sets and microwave ovens. She wanted to see if her theories would work before asking for government funding. The alien scientist was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Your species builds experimental space-time manipulation devices in residential structures using entertainment equipment? We're pretty good at improvising. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent alarms throughout the ship. Lieutenant Park's voice came over the intercom. Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have multiple contacts approaching fast. Marcus and Veltar rushed to the bridge, where the displays showed a dozen ships dropping out of FTL around them. These vessels were larger than the Zephyrian science ship, with angular hulls covered in weapon ports. Hegemony Patrol, Veltar said, his voice tight with worry. Captain, you need to leave immediately. If they capture your ship, they'll strip it down to study your technology. Your species isn't ready for that kind of attention. What about you? I'll tell them I was investigating an unusual energy reading, nothing about your ship or your capabilities. Marcus nodded to his crew. Emergency jump. Get us out of here. Where to, sir? Home. We need to report this. The Endeavor's wormhole. Drive engaged, tearing a hole in space that swallowed the ship in an instant. Veltar watched them disappear, then turned to face the approaching hegemony vessels. He had a lot of difficult explaining to do, but first, he had to decide how much to tell them. The lead hegemony ship, a massive dreadnought called the Iron Fist, moved into position around the quantum wind. Its captain, a warrior named Thokmur, was known throughout the fleet for his suspicious nature and quick temper. Science Commander Veltar, Thokmur's voice boomed across the communication channel. Explain your presence in this system. Routine stellar cartography, Captain. I detected an unusual energy signature and came to investigate. What kind of energy signature? Veltar hesitated. What he said next could change the course of galactic history. If he told the truth, the hegemony would immediately move to capture or destroy Earth before humanity could develop their technology further. If he lied, he might give the humans time to prepare for what was coming. Probably a pulsar glitch, he said finally. False alarm. My sensors are due for recalibration. Thokmur seemed satisfied with the explanation. Return to your assigned patrol route, Science Commander, and get those sensors fixed. The hegemony ships jumped away, leaving Veltar alone with his thoughts and a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He had just lied to his own government to protect a species that had achieved the impossible. Meanwhile, the Endeavor emerged from its wormhole jump in Earth orbit. Marcus stood on his bridge, looking down at the blue and white world that had suddenly become very small and very vulnerable. Communications, get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command. Priority Alpha. Yes, sir. And patch in Dr. Chen. She needs to hear this. Within hours, the most important people on Earth were gathered in a secure conference room deep beneath the Colorado mountains. Marcus told them everything. The alien ship, the conversation with Veltar, and the arrival of the Hegemony Patrol. So they know about us, said General Morrison, the head of Earth Defense Command. Some of them do, Marcus replied. But the Zephyrian scientists seem to be trying to protect us. He didn't tell the military ships about our capabilities. Dr. Chen had been quiet during the briefing, but now she spoke up. How long do you think we have? No way to know for sure, Marcus said. But based on what Science Commander Veltar told me, Our existence is going to cause major problems in their galactic community. Species aren't supposed to develop FTL travel this quickly. Then we need to prepare, General Morrison said. Dr. Chen, how quickly can you build more ships with the wormhole drive? Give me 6 months and unlimited resources, and I can build a fleet. You have both. As of this moment, Earth's entire industrial capacity is at your disposal. Dr. Chen smiled, the same expression she had worn in her laboratory 3 years earlier when she first opened a hole in space. Then let's get to work. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations throughout the galaxy began detecting unusual activity in the Sol system. The humans were moving faster than ever before, launching massive construction projects and industrial operations that didn't match any known development pattern. But the aliens who monitored those stations still thought they were watching a primitive species slowly building chemical rockets and metal space stations. They had no idea that the humans were preparing for war. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered on Nexus Prime within days of receiving Science Commander Veltar's classified report. The massive crystal dome that housed the council chambers hummed with tension and urgent conversations. Ambassador Zexathara stood at her assigned podium, her crystalline form rigid with anger and disbelief. The report that had triggered this emergency session lay open before her, its contents challenging everything she thought she knew about galactic politics and species development. The evidence is clear, announced Prime Chancellor Mordeth, the ancient being who presided over council sessions. His voice echoed through the chamber with the authority of 10,000 years. The species known as humans have achieved faster-than-light travel centuries ahead of projected timelines. Angry voices filled the chamber. Representatives demanded explanations, accused each other of intelligence failures, and argued about what should be done. Through it all, Zexthara remained silent, rereading the report that made her earlier dismissal of humanity look like the worst kind of professional failure. According to Science Commander Veltar's testimony, Mordeth continued, the human vessel demonstrated technology that appears to be based on controlled wormhole manipulation. This technology allowed them to travel 4 light-years in under 1 hour. Council member Thekvar of the Mining Guild stood up, his massive form towering over the other delegates. This is impossible. No species develops FTL travel without first establishing a proper industrial base. The humans haven't even colonized their own star system. Nevertheless, Mordeth replied, the evidence suggests they have done exactly that. Ambassador Zexathara finally activated her speaking platform. The chamber fell silent as all attention turned to her. As the representative of the galaxy's most powerful military force, her words would carry enormous weight. 3 years ago, she began, her voice carefully controlled. A junior aide brought concerns about unusual energy readings from the Sol system. I dismissed those concerns based on standard species development models. I was wrong. The admission sent shockwaves through the chamber. Hegemony representatives were not known for acknowledging mistakes. The question now, Zexathara continued, is what we do about this unprecedented situation. The humans have broken every rule of natural technological progression. They pose a threat to the established order of galactic civilization. Chancellor. Mordeth nodded gravely. The Council recognizes 3 potential courses of action. First, immediate military intervention to prevent further human technological development. Second, diplomatic contact to bring humanity into the galactic community under strict supervision. Third, continued observation while we attempt to understand how they achieved this impossible advancement. The chamber erupted in debate. 3. Distinct factions quickly emerged, each with their own vision of how to handle the human problem. Fleet Admiral Thokran of the Hegemony military stepped forward to address the council. His scarred carapace and battle-worn appearance spoke of centuries of warfare across the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice carried the absolute confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "The military solution is the only logical choice," he declared. "The humans have demonstrated that they can bypass normal technological development. If we allow them to continue unchecked, they will become a threat to every established power in the galaxy." He activated a holographic display showing the Sol system. "Our intelligence indicates that the humans are a violent, aggressive species. They have spent their entire recorded history fighting wars against their own kind. Give them access to galactic technology, and they will use it to conquer their neighbors." Furthermore, Thokran continued, "their rapid technological advancement suggests they may possess scientific capabilities we don't understand. That makes them unpredictable and dangerous. The only safe course is to occupy their system before they can develop weapons based on their FTL technology." Many of the military representatives nodded in agreement. The logic was hard to argue with. Unknown capabilities plus aggressive tendencies equaled a threat that needed to be neutralized. But Dr. Yethmira of the Academic Collective stood to offer a different perspective. Her species valued knowledge above all else, and the idea of destroying a potentially valuable source of new discoveries horrified her. "Fleet Admiral Thokran speaks from fear, not wisdom," she said, her voice carrying the measured tones of a born teacher. "The humans have achieved something that every physicist in the galaxy believed was impossible. Instead of destroying them, we should be studying them." She activated her own display, showing comparative technological development charts. "Look at these progression curves. Every other species in the galaxy has followed roughly the same path to FTL travel. The humans have taken a completely different route. They've solved problems that have puzzled our greatest minds for millennia. Think of what we could learn from them. Their approach to scientific research, their methods of technological development, their unique perspective on physics and engineering. The knowledge they possess could advance galactic civilization by thousands of years." The academic representatives murmured approval, but Dr. Yethmira wasn't finished. "More importantly, destroying them would be a crime against knowledge itself. How many other species have we underestimated because they didn't follow our expected development patterns? How many potential breakthroughs have we missed because we assumed that our way was the only way?" The third faction was represented by Ambassador Krelon of the Freedom Alliance, a loose confederation of worlds that opposed hegemony expansion. His species looked almost human, which gave his words additional weight in the current debate. "Both previous speakers have valid points," he said diplomatically, "but they miss the most important factor. The humans have earned the right to self-determination. They've achieved FTL travel independently, which by galactic law makes them eligible for sovereign status." He gestured toward the holographic display of Earth. "We have no right to invade their system or force them into our academic programs. The proper course is to make diplomatic contact, offer them membership in the galactic community, and respect their choices. The humans may be different from us, but that doesn't make them our enemies. Some of the galaxy's greatest achievements have come from species that approached problems differently than everyone else. Perhaps it's time we stop trying to force every species into the same mold." The debate continued for hours. Military leaders argued for immediate action to prevent humanity from becoming a threat. Scientists pleaded for the chance to study human technology and methods. Diplomats called for patience and proper first contact procedures. Through it all, Ambassador Zexathara remained silent, weighing options and considering the political implications of each choice. As the representative of the galaxy's dominant military power, her decision would likely determine humanity's fate. Finally, Chancellor Mordeth called for order. "We must reach a decision. The humans are undoubtedly aware that they've been discovered. Every day we delay gives them more time to prepare, whatever their intentions might be." Fleet Admiral Thokran stepped forward again. "I volunteer to lead a pacification fleet to the Sol system. 200 ships should be sufficient to overwhelm. any defenses they might have constructed. We can occupy their worlds, study their technology, and integrate their population into the galactic community under proper supervision. And if they resist, asked Dr. Yethmira, then we'll demonstrate why the hegemony has maintained peace in this galaxy for over 2,000 years, Thokran replied grimly. Ambassador Zexathara finally activated her speaking platform. The chamber fell silent again, waiting for her decision. The hegemony supports Fleet Admiral Thokran's proposal, she said formally. The human situation represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. We cannot allow a species with unknown capabilities to develop advanced weapons while remaining outside the established order. The vote that followed was close, but the military faction won. Fleet Admiral Thokran was authorized to assemble a pacification fleet and proceed to the Sol system with orders to secure human technology and bring their worlds under galactic administration. As the council session ended, representatives scattered to their ships and communication arrays. Within hours, the news would spread across the galaxy. The mysterious humans would finally be brought into line, but some delegates left the chamber with heavy hearts. Dr. Yethmira looked at the voting records and wondered what knowledge would be lost when Thokran's fleet completed its mission. Ambassador Krelon thought about the injustice of attacking a species for the crime of being different. And in the deepest levels of the Nexus Prime data archives, a junior aide added a new entry to the official record: species designation human, status change from quarantine to military target. Meanwhile, 18 months before Thokran's fleet would arrive at Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the center of the largest construction project in human history. The Luna shipyards stretched across the surface of Earth's moon, massive industrial complexes that worked around the clock to build humanity's first space navy. "How many ships will be ready when they arrive?" asked Admiral Rodriguez, who had been promoted to oversee Earth's space defense forces. 43 combat vessels, Dr. Chen replied, checking her datapad. Each one equipped with the latest version of the wormhole drive and the new quantum torpedo systems. Admiral Rodriguez looked out at the construction sites where human workers and automated systems assembled ships at an unprecedented pace. "Will it be enough?" Dr. Chen smiled, but there was no humor in her expression. "Admiral, we're not building ships to fight a conventional space battle. We're building something the galaxy has never seen before." She led him to a display showing the tactical specifications of their new vessels. Unlike the massive dreadnoughts favored by galactic powers, the human ships were smaller, faster, and built around completely different strategic principles. "The aliens expect us to fight the way they do," Dr. Chen explained. "Big ships, heavy armor, direct confrontations, but we're going to give them something they've never prepared for. Which is human creativity. We're going to fight dirty, Admiral. We're going to break every rule of space combat they've ever written." In the depths of space, Fleet Admiral Thokran's armada assembled at the rally point. 200 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy formed up in perfect formation, their crews confident in their overwhelming technological superiority. Thokran stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Victory, and reviewed the intelligence reports on human capabilities. Primitive weapons, limited industrial capacity, no experience with space warfare. The campaign would be over in a matter of hours. "All ships report ready for jump," announced his communications. "Officer." "Excellent," Thokran replied. "Set course for the Sol system. It's time to teach these upstart humans their place in the galactic order." The massive fleet engaged their FTL drives and disappeared into the depths of space, carrying with them the absolute confidence that came from 10,000 years of military dominance. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Back on Earth, in a secure bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the leaders of humanity's unified government watched the final preparations for war. Satellite networks tracked the approaching alien fleet, Industrial complexes churned out weapons and ammunition, and millions of people prepared for a battle that would determine the future of their species. 18 months, said General Morrison, looking at the countdown timer on the main display. Think we'll be ready? Dr. Chen looked around the room at the faces of humanity's best and brightest, then at the displays showing their preparations. General, we've spent our entire history preparing for this fight. We just didn't know it would be against aliens. Outside, across the surface of Earth and throughout the solar system, humanity prepared for war with the same determination that had carried them from caves to the stars in the span of a few thousand years. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing technology that was thousands of years more advanced than their own. They were going to fight anyway, because that's what humans do. Fleet Admiral Thokran stood on the bridge of the inevitable victory and watched the Sol system grow larger on his tactical displays. Around him, 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships held perfect formation, their weapons powered, and shields at maximum strength. This was the largest military operation the hegemony had launched in over 50 years. "All ships report ready for battle," announced his tactical officer, a young warrior eager to prove himself in combat. Thokran nodded, his scarred carapace reflecting the light from the bridge displays. In his 300 years of military service, he had conquered 17 star systems and defeated dozens of rebellious worlds. The humans would be just another entry in his long list of victories. "Begin sensor sweep of the system," he ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The main display showed the Sol system in perfect detail. The third planet from the star glowed blue and white, clearly the center of human civilization. Closer to the star, massive industrial installations covered the second planet's surface. The fourth planet showed signs of mining operations, and the asteroid belt buzzed with automated cargo haulers. Impressive industrial development for such. "A young species," admitted his science officer. "They've been busy since we started monitoring them." Thokran studied the tactical readouts with growing confusion. "Where are their defensive installations? I'm not seeing any orbital fortresses or planetary shields. Sir, we're detecting approximately 40 ships in the outer system. They appear to be moving to intercept our fleet." 40 ships? Thokran laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "They're sending 40 ships against 200? Have they lost their minds?" His communications officer looked up. From her station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel, audio only." "Put it through." A calm voice filled the bridge, speaking in accented galactic standard. "Hegemony Fleet, this is Admiral Maria Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You are entering sovereign human space without permission. Please state your intentions." Thokran activated the communication system. "Human Admiral, I am Fleet Admiral Thokran of the Hegemony Military. You will surrender your ships immediately and prepare your worlds for occupation. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force." A long pause followed. When Admiral Chen responded, her voice carried a tone that Thokran couldn't quite identify. "Admiral Thokran, we respectfully decline your demand. Please withdraw from our system immediately." "You decline?" Thokran's voice rose in disbelief. "Admiral, you are facing the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Your 40 primitive ships cannot possibly stand against us." "Perhaps," Admiral Chen replied, "but we're going to try anyway." The communication channel closed. Thokran stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what he had just heard. In his centuries of military service, no enemy had ever been stupid enough to fight against impossible odds. Surrender was the logical choice when facing overwhelming force. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human ships are moving into attack formation. They're actually going to fight us." Thokran shook his head in amazement. "Then we'll give them a quick lesson in military reality. All ships advance to medium range and prepare to fire. Target their lead vessels. We'll disable a few ships and show them how hopeless their situation is." The hegemony fleet moved forward with the precision of a machine. Each ship knew its place in the formation, each weapon crew knew their targets, and each shield operator knew their power settings. This was how galactic warfare had been conducted for thousands of years, overwhelming force applied with mathematical precision. The human ships moved differently. Instead of forming the traditional battle lines that had dominated space combat for millennia, they scattered into what looked like random positions. Some ships accelerated toward the hegemony fleet while others seemed to be retreating. Several disappeared entirely from the tactical displays. "Where did they go?" demanded Thokran. His science officer checked his instruments frantically. "I don't know, sir. They were there 1 second, gone the next. Our sensors show no trace of them." "That's impossible. Ships don't just vanish." Before anyone could respond, space around the hegemony fleet erupted in chaos. The missing human ships materialized inside the fleet formation, their weapons already firing. But these weren't the energy beams and plasma bolts that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. Humans were firing chunks of metal. "Kinetic projectiles!" shouted the tactical officer. "They're firing solid matter at near light speed!" The primitive-looking weapons punched through advanced hegemony shields like they weren't there. Energy barriers designed to stop the most powerful plasma cannons in the galaxy proved useless against simple metal traveling at incredible velocity. "How are they penetrating our shields?" Thokran demanded. "The projectiles are too small and too fast for our defensive systems to target," his science officer replied, his voice tight with panic. "And they're not carrying energy signatures our shields are designed to block." 3 hegemony ships exploded in quick succession as human kinetic rounds found their reactor cores. The beautiful formation that had taken years to perfect dissolved into chaos as captains tried to figure out how to fight an enemy that appeared and disappeared at will. "All ships, return fire," Thokran ordered. The hegemony weapons lit up space with devastating energy beams, but they had nothing to shoot at. The human ships had vanished again, only to reappear seconds later in completely different positions. "Sir, they're using some kind of instantaneous travel technology," reported his science officer. "Our ships can't predict where they'll appear next." Thokran watched in growing horror as more of his vessels were destroyed by weapons that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their defenses. The humans were fighting like nothing he had ever encountered. They ignored every rule of space combat, used weapons that no civilized species would consider, and employed tactics that violated every principle of military logic. "They're not fighting like a spacefaring civilization," he muttered. "Sir, they're fighting like pirates, like savages who don't know the proper way to conduct warfare." Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communication system again. "Admiral Thokran, we've disabled 15 of your ships. Are you ready to discuss withdrawal from our system?" 15 ships? Thokran checked his tactical display. She was right. 15 of his most advanced warships were either destroyed or crippled, and the human fleet was still intact. "Impossible," he whispered. But the evidence was right there on his screens. The humans were winning. All ships, focus fire on the nearest. "Human vessel," he ordered, "concentrate everything we have on a single target." The hegemony fleet turned its weapons on one human ship, pouring enough energy into it to melt a small moon. The human vessel's shields flared and died under the massive assault, and for a moment Thokran thought they had finally scored a victory. Then the human ship rammed directly into the bridge of the hegemony dreadnought Eternal Dominance. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers. When the light faded, both ships were gone, taking 1,500 hegemony crew members and 12 humans with them. "Did they just—" Thokran's tactical officer couldn't finish the sentence. "They sacrificed an entire ship just to destroy one of ours," Thokran said quietly. "What kind of species does that?" The answer came from his communication system, where Admiral Chen's voice carried a tone of cold determination. "The kind that refuses to surrender our freedom, Admiral. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to make every life count. More human ships materialized around the hegemony fleet. This time they were carrying different weapons, massive metal cylinders that looked crude compared to advanced galactic technology. Nuclear weapons, his science officer announced with disbelief. They're using nuclear weapons in space combat. The primitive bombs detonated throughout the hegemony formation, against ships designed to withstand the sophisticated energy weapons of galactic civilization. The crude nuclear devices were devastatingly effective. Their shields could stop plasma beams and particle cannons, but they weren't designed to handle the massive electromagnetic pulses and radiation bursts of nuclear explosions. Our shield generators are failing across the fleet, reported his engineering officer. The electromagnetic interference is overloading our systems. Thokron watched his beautiful fleet dissolve into chaos. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. Weapons malfunctioned and exploded in their own launch tubes. Communication systems went dead as radiation scrambled their electronics. The humans pressed their advantage ruthlessly. They appeared in the middle of the confusion, firing their kinetic weapons at point-blank range into ships whose shields were down and whose crews were struggling to restore basic systems. "Sir, we've lost over half the fleet," his tactical officer reported, his voice hollow with shock. "The humans they're destroying us!" For the first time in his 300-year military career, Fleet Admiral Thokron considered retreat. But the idea went against everything he had been taught about hegemony superiority and military honor. "Sir," his communications officer called. "Out. We're receiving a transmission from the human admiral." "Put it through." Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge again, but this time it carried an offer rather than a threat. "Admiral Thokron, you've fought bravely, but this battle is over. Withdraw your remaining ships, and we'll allow you to leave our system safely." Thokron looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were the finest warriors in the galaxy, trained from birth for space combat, equipped with the most advanced technology their civilization could produce. And they were losing to a species that had achieved spaceflight less than a century ago. "How?" he asked quietly. "How are you defeating us?" "Because we don't fight fair, Admiral. We don't follow rules. We do whatever it takes to win." Thokron stared at his tactical display, where 63 of his ships still showed green status indicators. 63 ships out of the 200 he had brought to conquer humanity. "All ships," he announced over the fleet communication system, "prepare to withdraw from the system." "Sir?" His tactical officer looked stunned. "You heard me. We're leaving." "But, Admiral, our orders were to occupy the human worlds." Thokron looked at the young warrior with something that might have been pity. "Our orders were based on the assumption that we were fighting a normal species. These humans are not normal." He activated the communication system one final time. "Admiral Chen, the hegemony fleet is withdrawing. But this isn't over. Others will come. We'll be ready for them too, Admiral." As the battered remains of his fleet jumped away from the Sol system, Thokron sat in his command chair and tried to understand what had just happened. In a few hours, a species that shouldn't have been able to put up any resistance at all had destroyed the largest military expedition in recent galactic history. They had fought without honor, without following the established rules of warfare, without any regard for the way civilized species were supposed to conduct themselves. They had used primitive weapons in ways that made them more effective than advanced technology. They had sacrificed their own people to achieve tactical advantages that no galactic military doctrine could account for. They had won. And now the galaxy would have to figure out what to do about a species that could achieve the impossible simply by refusing to accept that it was impossible. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the alien fleet disappear into the depths of space. Around her, the surviving ships of humanity's first space navy regrouped and began rescue operations for their fallen comrades. "Think they'll be back?" asked her tactical officer. Admiral Chen looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, representatives of dozens of species were trying to figure out how to deal with humanity's unexpected victory. "Oh yes," she said quietly. "They'll be back. But next time, they'll know what they're dealing with." She turned to her communications officer. "Send a message to Earth Defense Command. Tell them we won the first battle, but the war is just beginning." In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations recorded the aftermath of the battle and transmitted their data to governments across the galaxy. The reports would trigger emergency sessions, military conferences, and diplomatic crises. The humans had announced their arrival on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible, by defeating the galaxy's most powerful military force using tactics that no one had thought to prepare for. The age of human expansion was about to begin. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the third time. The great crystal dome of Nexus Prime had seen many historic moments, but nothing quite like this. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as reports flowed in from every corner of known space. The humans were everywhere. Ambassador Zexithara stood at her podium, but her usual confidence had been replaced by something approaching humility. The crystalline being who had once dismissed humanity as primitive warmongers now found herself reading reports that challenged everything she thought she knew about galactic politics. "The situation has evolved far beyond our initial projections," she announced to the assembled delegates. "In the 6 months since Admiral Thokran's fleet was defeated, human ships have been detected in over 40 star systems." A murmur of concern rippled through the chamber. 40 systems in 6 months was an expansion rate that no species had ever achieved. "They're not conquering," Zexithara continued, reading from her data pad. "They're exploring, trading, and making contact with species we've never encountered. Somehow they've established diplomatic relations with the Kethmori Republic, signed trade agreements with the Veltari Consortium, and offered technological assistance to a dozen developing civilizations." Chancellor Mordeth's ancient voice filled the chamber. "How is this possible? Our intelligence indicated that humanity possessed at most 50 ships." Dr. Yethmira of the Academic Collective stood to address the council. Unlike the military representatives, she looked excited rather than worried. "Chancellor, we've been monitoring human industrial output since the battle. Their manufacturing capacity has increased by over 300% in 6 months. They're building ships faster than any species in recorded history." "That's impossible," declared General Crixton of the Hegemony military. "Ship construction requires years of planning, resource allocation, and quality control. No one builds a fleet that quickly." "Apparently humans do," Dr. Yethmira replied. "They've turned their entire home system into a massive shipyard. Every moon, asteroid, and orbital platform is producing something related to space exploration. Their approach to manufacturing is unlike anything we've seen." She activated a holographic display showing the Sol system. The image revealed construction sites throughout the system, from massive shipyards orbiting Jupiter to mining operations in the asteroid belt. They use modular construction techniques that allow them to build ships like assembling puzzle pieces. Instead of constructing each vessel individually, they mass-produce standardized components and combine them in different configurations for different purposes. Ambassador Krelon of the Freedom Alliance looked thoughtful. "Ingenious. They've applied manufacturing principles from their home world to space construction. More than that," Dr. Yethmira continued, "they're sharing their techniques with other species. The Kethmori have increased their own ship production by 200% using human manufacturing methods." The revelation sent another wave of concern through the chamber. If humans were teaching their rapid development techniques to other species, the balance of power in the galaxy could shift dramatically. "There's something else," Zexithara said reluctantly. "We've received a formal request from the human government for membership in the Galactic Council." Silence filled the chamber. In 10,000 years of galactic civilization, no species had ever applied for council membership within a century of achieving FTL travel. Most species required several hundred years to develop the political and social structures necessary for galactic citizenship. Chancellor Mordeth spoke into the silence. Under what authority do they make this request? They cite the Galactic Charter, Article 7, Zexathara replied. Any species that achieves faster-than-light travel and establishes peaceful contact with at least 5 council-member species may apply for provisional membership. They've met those requirements, Ambassador Krelon observed. In fact, they've exceeded them. My latest reports indicate they've made contact with over 20 council species. And what do those species report about human behavior? Asked Chancellor Mordeth. Dr. Yethmira consulted her notes. Universally positive. The humans have offered technological assistance without demanding anything in return. They've helped the Zephyrians solve a quantum computing problem that had puzzled them for decades. They've provided medical technology to the Morden that eliminated a genetic disease that had plagued their species for generations. They're giving away advanced technology? General Crixton sounded incredulous. Not giving away, Dr. Yethmira corrected. Trading. But their trade terms are remarkably generous. They seem more interested in establishing relationships than maximizing profit. Ambassador Zexathara accessed another report. We've also received multiple requests from member species asking for human technical advisors. The Veltari want help improving their industrial efficiency. The academic collective has formally requested access to human research methods. Why? Asked Chancellor Mordeth. Because human scientists approach problems differently than anyone else in the galaxy, Dr. Yethmira explained, her excitement evident. Where we see impossible barriers, they see engineering challenges. Where we accept limitations, they find creative solutions. She pulled up another display showing comparative research data. In 6 months, human scientists working with the academic collective have made breakthrough discoveries in 3 different fields. They've developed new approaches to quantum mechanics, discovered more efficient methods of energy storage, and created new materials that shouldn't be possible according to our current understanding of physics. The chamber buzzed with conversation as delegates tried to process the implications. The humans weren't just militarily dangerous, they were revolutionizing galactic science and technology. There's one more thing, Zexathara said, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. We've received a personal message from the human representative who will be addressing the council today. They're already here? Chancellor Mordeth sounded surprised. Ambassador Sarah Chen arrived this morning aboard a new class of human vessel. She's requested permission to address the full council regarding humanity's application for membership. Chancellor Mordeth consulted the council records. Dr. Sarah Chen, the scientist who developed human FTL technology. The same. Zexathara confirmed. She's been appointed as humanity's first galactic ambassador. Very well. Summon Ambassador Chen to address the council. The massive doors of the council chamber opened, and Sarah Chen walked in with the confident stride of someone who had spent her life solving impossible problems. She wore a simple blue uniform that looked primitive compared to the elaborate formal wear favored by most galactic diplomats, but her presence commanded attention. She approached the central speaking platform and looked around the chamber at representatives from hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the vast space. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, I am Ambassador Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation. I come before you today not as a conqueror or a supplicant, but as a neighbor who wishes to join the galactic community. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. 6 months ago, many of you saw humanity as a threat to be eliminated or a curiosity to be studied. I understand why. We don't follow the traditional patterns of species development. We don't accept that things are impossible just because they've never been done before. We approach problems with what you might call an uncomfortable level of optimism. Soft laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. But I'm here to tell you that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our military capabilities. Our greatest strength is our refusal to accept limitations. She activated a holographic display showing images from across human space. Construction sites, research facilities, and ships carrying supplies to distant worlds. In the past 6 months, we've established trade relationships with 23 species, provided technological assistance to 17 developing civilizations, and opened our research facilities to scientists from across the galaxy. We've done this not because we expect something in return, but because we believe that knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied. Ambassador Krelon stood up. Ambassador Chen, your species' rapid expansion has caused concern among some council members. What assurances can you give us that humanity doesn't pose a threat to galactic stability? Sarah smiled, the expression that had preceded every major breakthrough in her scientific career. Ambassador Krelon, I can't promise that we won't change things. In fact, I can guarantee that we will. But change isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's an opportunity. She gestured to the display, which now showed comparative development charts. Every species in this chamber has benefited from contact with human technology and methods. The Keth Mori have solved a transportation problem that had limited their expansion for centuries. The Veltari have increased their energy efficiency by 400%. The academic collective has made more scientific breakthroughs in 6 months than in the previous decade. Dr. Yethmira stood up. Ambassador Chen, what does humanity want from galactic civilization? We want to be part of something greater than ourselves, Sarah replied. We want to explore the galaxy, learn from other species, and contribute to the advancement of all civilizations. We want to help solve the problems that have puzzled the galaxy for millennia, and we want other species to help us solve ours. And in return, we offer what we've always offered: innovation, determination, and the absolute conviction that any problem can be solved if you approach it from the right angle. General Crixton stood up, his battle-scarred form imposing even in the peaceful council chamber. Ambassador Chen, what about military matters? Your species defeated a hegemony fleet using tactics that violated every established principle of space warfare. Sarah's expression grew serious. General, we fought because we were attacked. We defended ourselves using the methods available to us, but we prefer cooperation to conflict. Every species we've encountered since that battle has been offered partnership rather than confrontation. Even former enemies? Sarah looked directly at the hegemony delegation. Especially former enemies. Fleet Admiral Takran is currently serving as a military liaison with our defense forces, helping us understand galactic military doctrine while we share our unconventional approaches with him. A gasp of surprise went through the chamber. The idea of former enemies working together so quickly was almost unheard of in galactic politics. How is that possible? Chancellor Mordeth asked. Because Admiral Thokran is a professional soldier who recognizes that learning from defeat is more valuable than nursing grudges, and because we believe that yesterday's enemy can become tomorrow's ally if you give them the chance. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates remained suspicious of humanity's rapid rise and unconventional methods. Others were excited by the possibilities that human innovation might bring to galactic civilization. Still others worried about the long-term implications of accepting a species that didn't follow traditional development patterns. Finally, Chancellor Mordeth called for order. The Council will now vote on humanity's application for provisional membership in the Galactic Council. The voting process took nearly an hour as representatives consulted with their home governments and weighed the implications of their decision. When the results were announced, the chamber fell silent. By a margin of 68% to 32%, the Galactic Council accepts humanity's application for provisional membership. Cheers erupted from some sections of the chamber, while others remained silent. Sarah Chen stood at the speaking platform, looking around at the representatives who had just voted to change the course of galactic history. "Thank you," she said simply. "We won't let you down." As the session ended and delegates began to file out, Ambassador Zexathera approached Sarah. The crystalline being who had once dismissed humanity as primitives now stood before their representative with something approaching admiration. "Ambassador Chen," she said quietly, "I owe you and your species an apology. I was wrong about humanity's potential." Sarah extended her hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Ambassador Zexathara, we all make mistakes based on incomplete information. The important thing is learning from them." Zexathara carefully shook the offered hand, a gesture of respect between two very different species. "What will humanity do now?" Sarah looked out through the crystal dome at the stars. "Beyond. What we've always done. We'll explore, we'll learn, and we'll help solve problems that everyone else thinks are impossible. And if you encounter new challenges, new obstacles that even human ingenuity can't overcome?" Sarah's smile was the same one she had worn in her laboratory years earlier when she first opened a hole in space. "Then we'll figure out new ways to be ingenious." 6 months later, the first human-designed starships rolled out of shipyards across the galaxy, built using techniques that combined human innovation with alien materials and technology. The ships were faster, more efficient, and more versatile than anything previously constructed. A year after that, the Joint Human-Alien Research Station at the edge of the galaxy made its first successful transmission to the Andromeda Galaxy, opening communication with civilizations that had been unreachable for millions of years. And in the depths of space, where the barriers between galaxies had once seemed insurmountable, human and alien engineers worked together on humanity's most ambitious project yet. A ship designed to make the journey to Andromeda not in millions of years, but in decades. Because that's what humans do. They take the impossible and make it inevitable, one breakthrough at a time. The galaxy would never be the same.